Welcome back, everybody, to the Marketing Rules podcast. And today is our Halloween special. And it's my pleasure to welcome back Liz Lembke, who you may remember from such podcasts as What Recruitment Can Learn from 80s Movies, What Podcasts Can Learn from Christmas Movies. And today it's what recruitment can learn from Halloween movies. Exactly. I don't have the rights to kind of play the Halloween theme, so so just have to pretend you're hearing the theme from Halloween in the background, basically at this point.
Exactly.
So, yeah. But Liz, it's an absolute pleasure to have you back.
I am so ecstatic to be back. I feel like we're building up like the alternative syllabus for, how to connect recruiting with really great movies and theme songs.
Well, we say really great movies, right? I know both our movie tastes, it's questionable at the best of times, right?
That is true. See, we're already going into terminology use.
And as I said before we started recording, this really is just an excuse for me and you, one, to have a chat because it's been a while since we've caught up, and to talk around movies that we kind of like and more really want to review and are just spuriously connecting to recruitment, right? So it's just a bit of fun, as opposed to kind of the usually very serious kind of guests we and podcasts we do on the show. So you know what? So should we get started? Before I do, right? For anyone who's watching the video, which, if you are listening to the audio version, then tune back in, follow us and you can we'll give you updates on when the video is live. But if you are watching this video, what Liz is kind of really made the effort today, right? As opposed
food truck girl, I'm representing.
Exactly. I mean, anyone who knows you though, Liz, I mean, I'm starting to think that kind of that headwear that you've got on literally is actually part of your hair now, right? Because every time I see you, you've got this kind of headgear on. It's part of you.
Well, it is because, as you know, bada bing, bada bang, I'm the devil's advocate for talent.
Wow,
Yeah. Kicking it off with the mispuns a lot. We're good.
Exactly. So there you go. So if you're watching on the video, you get to see this amazing kind of headgear and a little bit of makeup as well on there as well. So I know you've really made the effort, as opposed to me, who's in just kind of an old jumper. Basically, at this point, I've made zero effort.
Hey, I think I recognize your character from Scream, though.
What Ghostface is that? I've been called worse. It's fine. You know what? So let's crack on. So why don't you open up with what's your first movie? Right. Tell us a little bit about the movie. Tease us in, and then let's tell us why it's relevant to recruitment.
Well, I just got to get my little pad from here for the order up. So for me, one of my first ones is the Addams Family Values.
Okay.
Because, of course, which has the great Joan Cusack. And she has the situation where she's doing a slideshow of her life while everyone else is seated around the boardroom table in electric chairs. And she talks about, her story. She gives her CV about what she wanted and how she had doting parents. And, for Christmas, they gave her, instead of the ballerina Barbie, they gave her a Malibu Barbie and just flipped her lid. Well, it's Joan Cusack. She is the wonderful woman to flip a lid. And for me, this aspect of everyone sitting around in a boardroom. So here, like the candidate panel review and talking about this candidate and the hiring manager saying, I wanted the Malibu Barbie. I didn't want the ballerina Barbie. How could they? So this aspect of you bringing in these amazing candidates, everyone's kind of in agreement, but feeling like they're in an electric chair because this tension of this is an amazing candidate. Why weren't they good enough?
I sit here in awe. When you kind of, for any kind of sports fans, sometimes, there was these stories around when anyone was playing with Zinedine Zidane, they would just sometimes the other players would just kind of like forget the game and watch in awe as Zinedine Zidane played. And I mean like that at this point. You genuinely given this some thought, and which is which is amazing because I generally kind of have really kind of, I pulled my notes together, kind of half an hour ago, and on space. But I mean, you've generally given this thought, and that's an amazing point you've made. With regards to kind of the Addams family, is it Addams Family Values or the Addams Family? Is it the both of them connected together? Are we
I think it's the Addams Family. It's the Addams Family Values.
right? The second one, the
That
sequel.
is a
Yeah,
that is a fact
yeah.
check. Yeah.
Yeah. Worth going back and revisiting. If
Absolutely.
no one's
Just to
kind of
see
watched it.
Angelica Houston
Yeah,
as Morticia
yeah. And
Adams.
the late, is it Raul Julia, wasn't it?
Yes,
As
excellent. Yeah,
as
absolutely.
Gomez. Yeah. Who
Yeah.
they gave it was a tour de force in that. And Christopher Lloyd as yeah, in there.
As
It's
Uncle
brilliant.
Fester, Joan
That's
Cusack's
that.
wonderfully doting husband that won't die.
Exactly. Brilliant. So my first one, let me give you. So it's number 3 in a series of movies. It's Halloween 3: Season of the Witch, which doesn't really
Ooh.
get a huge amount of kind of as much respect as it should be.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
One, because it doesn't have Michael Myers in it. It doesn't have Jamie Lee Curtis in it. It goes off on a completely different tangent, basically, from all the other movies. Which you might see where I'm going with this, right? Where is that in recruitment, I talk to a lot of businesses about the Madonna effect. In that, basically, it's a good thing to kind of review and change up and switch things up every kind of 5 years.
Yep.
Look where you are in your industry. Look at the industries you're serving. Look at the industry people you've got within your business. Are you doing the right thing? Should you start looking at moving into contracted as well as perm?
Yep.
And so my spurious connection with Halloween 3 Season of the Witch is that they weren't afraid to make this kind of change up, knowing that they've already got a successful franchise and they've gone and completely changed the format, completely new characters, completely new kind of storyline, completely everything completely changed. Only the fact that it's got the Halloween name attached to it and it was released on the 31st of October. That is the only thing that has kind of got in connection. However, it was a risk they took.
Yeah, absolutely. That's
And
a really
my
good
feeling is
point.
now
Yeah.
it's a cult classic. Okay, However, there's an argument to be made within business that you need to kind of have a review, think about making a change, and don't be afraid of making a mistake. A lot of time you see kind of paralysis within recruitment agencies specifically. And it can be to their detriment because they don't kind of know where to move next, and there's a fear of kind of making those changes. So the makers of Halloween 3 obviously weren't in that situation. They were willing to make that change and look at kind of really changing it. And from a personal point of view, a little bit about the movie. If you haven't seen it, it is worth going back and look at. I recently did kind of a Halloween marathon from 1 all the way through to as many as I could kind of get through before they got to start remaking them up for the third or fourth time. I kind of that's where I kind of stopped. But Halloween 1, Halloween 2, and Halloween 3 from the kind of 70s and early 80s, definitely worth kind of going back and revisiting. They're great movies. They're well directed. They're well acted. They're short as well. I mean, you can probably get through all 3 of them in an evening. I mean, in all honesty, with a big bucket of
It's the
popcorn.
Jiffy Pop popcorn like
Exactly
time.
right. Yeah. Massive big bucket of popcorn, and away you go, and you can do all 3 probably in an evening. But actually, it is an underrated movie. Is Halloween 3 Season of the Witch? If it was called anything else, and it was made completely. If it was just called Season of the Witch and nothing to do with Halloween, I think it would be regarded as a better movie. But because it's got the legacy,
that's interesting. Yeah, it is. It's funny how things are always drawn in comparison when there are multiples.
Yeah, exactly. Okay,
Yeah.
so.
But I love that. It's like taking Clayton Christensen's like disruptive innovation, saying what's the job to be done, and saying, okay, how can we redefine ourselves of, people know the name, but then what's that surprise and what's that innovation that we're not falling in love with our goods and services of what is Halloween, but saying, hey, how do we reinvent it?
Again, I'm just in awe just listening to you, kind of like, plucking names and scenarios out. Yeah, amazing. So what's your second movie?
Okay. Well, my second movie is The Witches of Eastwick.
Okay.
We had to do an 80s classic. And so for those of you who don't remember this incredibly weird movie, It has the wonderful Michelle Pfeiffer. It has the wonderful Cher and Susan Sarandon, who dream up and create a spell for the most handsome man to move to Eastwick.
And who do they get?
And who do they get? Exactly, Jack Nicholson. I'm like, okay, this somehow doesn't exactly compute, but yeah, alrighty. Spell of disbelief has been enchanted. Yeah. So this aspect of three incredibly talented women coming together, putting their powers together, and then creating this perfect man who then turns out to be Jack Nicholson, who they cannot kill, although they do try to maim, and even their dog gets into part of the massive wax voodoo doll destruction. So, all right, now Liz, how are you going to build that bridge?
Exactly.
So,
Again, I'm just waiting for this. When I said I was at all, now, if you can do this, then I'm incredibly impressed, right?
yeah. So for me, okay, taking it to this aspect of Vanishing Women, a great film by Jimmy that's going to be coming out soon about how corporate women are fleeing the workplace, and how are we paying attention and paying attention to what's right in front of our noses. Of here, these absolutely fabulous women with skills, with abilities, with expertise are disappearing from the workplace, and there's no conversation. But the conversation is about the charming devil of, here, why isn't he getting a bigger role? Why isn't he doing this? So this is a message for me also for HR, for recruiting, for sourcing, as we're looking at what's right in front of us in terms of talent, and seeing how they're vanishing and not getting the opportunities and not being promoted, etc. It's that aspect of how are we blinded by the devil who's charming, who's right in front of us, and ignoring the talents and the beauties of the witches that are in the corporate space.
Wow, an allegory for diversity. That's that was well put. Yeah, and a good point, right? And it's kind of it's been the kind of hot topic really for the kind of last few years, that how we can just increase diversity generally within our kind of businesses, especially within recruitment and the businesses that recruiters work with. There's the lack of kind of diversity within the IT space and the kind of engineering space and those kinds of spaces are all kind of really kind of people making some real kind of headway in those, but still a lot of kind of room for maneuver and kind of a lot of things that need to be done. I'd never thought of the Witches of Eastwick as an allegory for diversity. So thank you. That was great. Right, for my next spurious connection, you're going to see a slight theme right with these, because as a man, as a middle-aged kind of white man, I've got a certain kind of style of thing of movie. Obviously, growing up in the 80s has completely affected me. And so,
in a positive way, James.
we'll let the listeners kind of decide on that once they've heard this. So the next up is one of my all-time favorite movies, which is The Thing. Okay.
Oh,
which is John Carpenter's,
okay.
actually, to give it John
Yeah,
Carpenter's
okay.
thing. If we're going to go for the full title. And if you haven't watched it, it is an absolute classic. It's beautifully made, it's beautifully shot, it's well directed, it's got a great script. It is actually a remake of The Thing from Another World from the 50s, which is an old black and white movie.
Did not know that.
It is about an alien that is able to mimic and copy humans, and so you don't know who's the alien, you don't know who's the human, and it hits a kind of an isolated group of kind of scientists in a kind of in the kind of Arctic Circle. Basically, there's no way of them, and it gets very intense. It's very close. It's very claustrophobic, and to this day, the special effects, being practical special effects, are absolutely brilliant and stunning. They still look amazing. I haven't got it with me now, but as I've proven on previous podcasts, as a man who likes a toy,
I can't wait.
I've actually got a kind of a kind of an action figure of Kurt Russell as Macready from The Thing, just over there, which I'm not going to bring up on because but I have got this as well. But The Thing, able to kind of copy him. So we're going to kind of go down this spewing around kind of copying and representation, and when is it good to kind of to look to your peers for inspiration, or when is it not good to look to your peers for inspiration? And is it always good to kind of if those guys over there are doing it well? We get this a lot in marketing. What are our competitors doing? We should be doing that. When it's really is, well, they're doing that, we should do something but better. Okay, we don't want to be copying them because we want to own this space. Well, I talk to my team and our clients all the time around own the space you're in, and do your own thing and be unique. This is one of my, again, if you've ever seen me present,
it's so
I get
true.
this uniqueness thing. Stop trying to be the biggest and the best, and try and be unique. Don't be like The Thing, kind of going around and copying your kind of your peers, because you're always going to be playing catch up in that sense. And that's really kind of as much of kind of a recruitment marketing kind of perspective. Is that we get asked to do this kind of competitor analysis, and it's like, well, yeah, we can do it. We don't mind doing it for information, as long as it's not to sit there and kind of copy what those guys are doing. So, okay, those guys are doing a podcast, so we must do a podcast as well. Those guys do this. And you're on a route to nowhere, because you're always going to be kind of on the back foot. You're always going to be watching them for what they do. And eventually you just be known for the guys that are kind of doing it the same as those guys over there, but just not as good. So kind of, do something you do, own that
Stepford
space.
Wise of marketing. Yeah,
exactly. And that's how I have kind of, hesitantly and very thinly connected The Thing, John Carpenter's The Thing, to what you should be doing and how you should kind of react against your peers, and the kind of work that they're putting out there, the things they're putting out there, and what you should or shouldn't do.
I love it. Oh, yeah, it's true. And that's a really good point of, all right, I'm going to make a pun. You ready for it?
Go for it.
So next horror movie, Nosferatu, we want to avoid vampire marketing so that...
it's like it's one mind. It literally is like one mind.
That the message doesn't get lost in terms of your hook. And at the same time, exactly like you said, that it's just not copying The Thing, that, you're doing it as well, just not as good. And so it's not remarkable in any way, shape, or form, because it's not unique to say, what's your unique awesome sauce? What's your unique value proposition that you as a, recruiting agency really bring to the world, and that you as the marketing team can really say, okay, let's speak to that, because that will make a huge difference.
Exactly. I couldn't have put it better myself. Exactly. So talk to me. Let's have another movie from you, please.
Okay. All right. I mean, I couldn't bring it in if we were, here. So there's two. I'm going to go first, probably with Beetlejuice.
Okay.
Beetlejuice. And I want to talk to Barbara before I say Beetlejuice a third time. So this is the scene with Winona Ryder, where Beetlejuice is stuck in a little miniature house and he wants to get out. And so he's trying to connive and scheme, because he can't say his own name. And so he's figuring out ways for her to say it 3 times so that he can be released back into the world, because Gina Davis and... was it Alec Baldwin?
It is Alec Baldwin, yeah.
Crazy. Yeah. They trapped him. And so Beetlejuice, I think Beetlejuice and recruiting, there are so many. I mean, where do we even...
Yeah, it's rich pickings, I think, right?
It's rich pickings, exactly. From, they're arriving in and not having an appointment, and then having to go through everyone else. So here, this aspect of here, the temptation of, you want this job. I'm going to tell you what you need to know. And that hesitation of, maybe I need to speak to Barbara. So who is that Barbara that you feel like you're being talked into something that you really don't want to do? And how are you taking a step back to say, okay, maybe I need to have a different consideration? Why are we being forced to take this job, to take this candidate, whatever it may be? Where are those times when you actually need to take a step back and say, okay, here, who is this Barbara? What do we need to talk to say, is this the right decision? Is this the path we want to go down on? Is this the path we want to commit to?
Again, I mean, it's just a joy to kind of to hear you kind of connect all these dots together. I think it's brilliant. Yeah, I mean, it's a good point, right? There's not much more I can say around it. You made it so. The movie itself, yeah, I mean, again, a classic. There's some great stars in it. Well directed, obviously, a Tim Burton movie. There's been toutings that there's going to be a sequel. Legacy. I guess it would be a legacy sequel these days. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Kind of an older Winona Ryder having to call on Beetlejuice to come back for some reason or something. I don't know, but there has been kind of talk of a sequel. But again, if you haven't seen it for a while, it is a brilliant movie, right? It is
It really is.
so
Yeah,
well
it's very
done.
nuanced.
Yeah, it's so well done. If you imagine at the time this came out, you'd never seen anything like this before. It was
so true.
It was funny. It had a genuine heart to it, and it was scary at times. It was kind of weird and scary, and again, some great practical effects, which I'm a big fan of. And an absolutely kind of knockout performance by Michael Keaton, who also went on then to be Batman based on his star in Beetlejuice.
Really? That's what we have to thank for that. Sorry, bada bing, bada bang.
Both Tim Burton movies, and hence why they kind of yeah, exactly. So I've got another two, and I'm gonna pick one, and I'm deciding on which one to go for, and I'm gonna go for The Fly from 1986.
Oh wow,
David Cronenberg movie with the amazing Jeff Goldblum and Gina Davis. Obviously based on a kind of a 50s kind of black and white movie that was with Vincent Price. Before I get into that, I'm going to tell you quite an embarrassing story from my childhood about The Fly, the old version with Vincent Price.
Okay, pray tell.
Okay, so I was watching this as a kid. I probably was kind of, I don't know, 5 or 6 or something. Why my parents had decided to let me watch this old horror movie.
I walked in on the Poltergeist. I asked myself the same question.
Why I was watching this is the old version, so it's pretty tame, but there's a scene right near the end where the kind of running up to this, the premise is obviously Vincent Price has kind of swap part of his body with a fly. So there's a half man, half fly version of him walking around. So it's Vincent Price with a fly head on, basically, for the majority of the movie. But also there is a tiny little fly with a Vincent Price head on somewhere as well.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And right at the end of the movie, it kind of, in almost what would now be classed as like an end credit scene, you see this fly with Vincent Price's head caught in a web with a spider wandering towards him, and he's kind of going, help me, help. Okay, so this had a bit of an effect on the young James, basically.
Yes, exactly.
Right, it pretty much kind of scared the living bejesus out of me, which my amazing mother decided to play upon in the middle of the night.
So kind. The hazing starts early in the James household.
Coming into my room, in my bedroom, kind of just after I just started to fall asleep, and saying through the door without me, help me, basically, and continuing to scare the living daylights out of me for the rest of the evening, because knowing, So yeah, I know my mum probably doesn't listen to this, but that's a story I often tell. So I thank her for
exactly, damaging early.
Exactly, yeah. Exactly. But back to the kind of the 1986 version of The Fly. Again, similar premise, but kind of more of a body horror, in a David Cronenberg kind of style. Again, one of these movies that's very claustrophobic. For most of the movie, it is basically just Jeff Goldblum and Gina Davis in this kind of loft apartment, dealing with the fact that he's slowly turning into a fly after trying to kind of crack teleportation, and a little fly kind of wanders into his teleportation pod, and he becomes half man, half fly. And again, it kind of, for me, this reimagining and revisioning and kind of reviewing kind of what you are, how you're working. as opposed to what I originally talked around Heavyweight 3. I mean, you've got to get it right, otherwise you do become this kind of this monster that is kind of necessarily unstoppable, and you
Yeah.
can't kind of always you then start to kind of lose control of it. So as opposed to the flip side of the season of the witch kind of argument, you've got to be sure that what you're kind of doing when you are making these changes, that you are kind of doing them smartly,
Yeah.
because it can kind of obviously adversely affect your business. And taking kind of in a new Coca-Cola kind of style, you could turn a lot of people off, right? This new kind of new
Yeah.
recipe could really be the thing that kind of actually kind of destroys you as opposed to kind of pushes you into the stratosphere. And obviously, we talk to businesses about this all the time around kind of repositioning themselves and reimagining themselves and rebranding themselves, and how you go around this, how you go about this. What do you do around the kind of legacy brands? How do you kind of reflect
Yeah.
that legacy proposition? The people that the candidates, the clients who you used to deal with when you were kind of one thing and now you're moving into another, and how you make that kind of transition, and all the things you need to think about when you are considering going down this route. Now, obviously, businesses kind of have to kind of refocus and reposition them. Market forces do this. Just generally, kind of the economics kind of do this.
Yeah.
Growth affects these kinds of things. But the things that can't be kind of just almost left to chance, that you need to kind of really kind of plan out. And this is not an advert for my business, but it needs to be kind of really carefully considered, and you need kind of expert help in those kind of senses. That trying to kind of figure out and kind of thrash around in the dark, and suddenly you've kind of become half man, half fly, probably isn't the right way to kind of go about it. I mean, you've kind of got lots of expertise out there, from me and my business to you and your business. There are
Yeah.
people out there who can kind of help and guide you along these kind of these changes that you need to go through. Don't necessarily always be kind of arrogant to think that you've kind of got it all fixed yourself, because within recruitment, we've got a lot of balls to juggle, right?
True
We
enough.
are
Yeah.
talking to we've got candidates on one side, we're B2B and B2C all at the same time. Unlike a lot of other kind of industries where it's going to only focus on one, they're only consumer facing or only business facing. With us, we're both. So you've got a lot of kind of potential audiences that you can kind of really disenfranchise quite quickly if you kind of make the wrong decisions, as opposed to a lot of other kind of types of business. So it's one of these things that I think that we starting to kind of see a lot more of, that people are starting to kind of ask for a bit more help when they're kind of going down. They realize they need to make this change. So, look to the right people to help you make that change.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I love it. Yeah, and don't just go with, all right, I looked in the phone book, but really look to who's going to be a good matching for what your business and proposition is, where you'd like to go, and who are you truly partnering with. That as you look to what that transformation could mean, that you actually are speaking a language where you understand each other.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, have you got any other movies? Is there anything else you want
Well, only the final one. The final one I would have to bring in would be Hunger Games.
Okay. All right. Okay. Let's hear this.
Again, we're stretching. We're stretching a
Yeah,
little
we are.
bit. So yeah. So for me, one of the hunger, because otherwise, Food Truck Girl would not make sense if we didn't have like Hunger Games and talking about Katniss. Yeah. So the scene I want to bring in is, so Katniss, it's that, how are we, going on to that next level? And she is waiting to go in to shoot her arrows. She walks into this, her name gets called out. There's this huge empty room with basically the targets on one end, and then 5 arrows, and then a bow. And then up above, there's the management. Basically, there's everyone having a nice board meeting there. And she goes in and she takes her first shot. And her first shot goes wide. So it doesn't hit the target directly in the head. It goes off to the side. And so she thinks and considers, and then takes the next bow. And then she gets a bullseye directly in the heart. Only after she made her first mistake, people had then looked after she said, "Hello, I'm Katniss. Thank you for having me." They paid attention to the first shot. The second shot she made, nobody was paying attention. They were all chatting, glad hugging, doing all those things. And so she said, well, she gave it a look, and then she took her next arrow and she shot it directly into the pig's mouth and caught the apple, and the apple then went onto the wall. And they all turned around shocked. And then she said, "Thank you. I appreciate you for your consideration." And then next scene, she was getting yelled at. "Why did you do that? This could have destroyed all our chances. This is going to be horrible for you." And then, she wins with the highest amount of points. Okay, so what are the lessons learned then also for recruiting? Is oftentimes, here you come in, people aren't really paying attention, or they over evaluate like a mistake or something that didn't go wrong with your career. Like, okay, we're looking at your CV. Why do you have this hole here? What happened? And all the other accomplishments and what you do and what you've done after that, people aren't paying attention to those. They're just looking at what went wrong. So what do you have to do as a candidate? You have to surprise and also put in your foot there so that you get noticed, because that will make a difference. So this is that kind of plaidoyer to say, how are you making sure that you and your personality shine through to catch the attention?
Yeah, amazing. And it's a great point. As from the other side, from a kind of as agencies and recruiters, we appreciate someone who makes
Yeah.
makes
Mm-hmm.
themselves stand out. Okay,
Yeah.
it's becoming more and more kind of difficult in the kind of economic situation with lots of people employed and lots of kind of empty jobs to try and find the right people and try and find the right kind of talent. So people who can make themselves stand out through however means. We're
Yeah.
always reading about these kind of things online around someone who kind of would stand outside a certain business with a billboard or something saying that they were looking for work, and they took that extra step to kind of, and then
Mm-hmm.
they finally
Yeah.
got a job. Those kind of things do work. Those kind of show initiative, right? There's
Yep.
nothing ever wrong with showing some initiative, especially as a candidate, to try and kind of get that. And admittedly, this is probably for the people who are just trying to start to get on the job ladder or trying to get a specific job.
Mm-hmm.
You don't really see it kind of once you kind of make it more kind of senior. But if you are just kind of new into the jobs market, trying to kind of build yourself a brand, your personal brand. We talk around this all
Yeah.
the kind of thing, all the kind of time. Understanding kind of how you're perceived by the people who you want to employ you can make a real difference. And if you can kind of bring that to the forefront and show them your kind of personality, and more and more these days, businesses are hiring on skills and not experience. So if you've got the right kind
Mm-hmm.
of skills,
Yeah.
you'll be considered for these jobs. So showing off that kind of initiative, I think everybody appreciates that. So another great point. I've got one more movie, but
Awesome.
just because I just wanted to mention it because it's a great movie, and again, it's one of these ones that everybody should watch at some point. I have zero idea how it kind of.
I love it. We're plugging a film. I love
Yeah,
it.
I have zero idea. I've got very kind of loose connections, but even then, it's probably just more embarrassing than anything else. So it's Dawn of the Dead from 1978, the George A. Romero kind
Okay.
of version,
Mm-hmm.
which is it's the continuation of his kind of the Dead series, and it is the very famous one that's set in the supermarket, in the kind of shopping mall, the kind of lonely shopping mall surrounded by zombies and a kind of a ragtag band of kind of survivors group kind of hold up in this shopping mall, and eventually one by one they all kind of get kind of consumed, but it's an allegory for consumer culture. You've kind of got
Yeah.
images of the zombies kind of like lumbering through kind of department stores and pretending to kind of live their previous lives by grabbing hold of things that seem kind of familiar and that kind of thing, as well as being just a damn good zombie movie all at the same time. I just want to mention it because it's a good movie, and I was looking through some inspirations for kind of for Halloween movies. This one cropped up, and I was like, yeah, that's a good movie. If anything, I could connect it to into kind of recruitment and recruitment marketing, is that we don't do enough around satire. Making
Yeah. Good point. Mm-hmm.
taking the kind of piss out of ourselves, looking kind of inward, reviewing
Yeah.
ourselves, and doing enough of that, and trying to see the kind of lighter side of what we do. We're getting better at it, but it is again one of those things that sometimes people are quite afraid of doing, especially if you're kind of where you sit within the recruitment chain. If you're recruiting kind of senior people, making kind of fun of yourself and satire can tend to be completely off the books, but it's something we kind of probably need to do more of.
Oh,
In a
goodness.
world where we're
Absolutely.
looking more
Yeah.
around our kind of mental health and understand and kind
Yep.
of being more kind of conscious of this kind of thing, having a review and taking a piss out of ourselves and seeing the funny side of what we sometimes do, not in a cruel way, but in a more of kind of satirical way, like Dawn of the Dead does on consumer culture, I don't think is necessarily a bad thing. That, I mean, is the thinnest connection to recruitment ever. However, I wanted to get it in. So
I love it. Well, and I think, to that aspect of, considering all the candidates as zombies and just going along, and that they'll want to do what they had done before, rather than how are we having a rethink as to, people have a lot of potentials, not just what they used to do, but what can they do?
see, that's why you're on here, Liz. See, immediately, you've picked up exactly why Dawn of the Dead should be on this list, and what I should have said, as opposed to something kind of really, really ridiculous around satire.
It also, okay, 2 follow-ups to that. So satire is important. So I do have a fly dish for you. I do have, to that point, a zombie for you. So,
Okay.
we have to have humor when we're going about this, because we're drinking the tequila, we're drinking the tea when we're talking about recruitment marketing, and about how do we really make those impacts. And so if we can build those bridges, we're good to go.
Now, again, this is why you get invited back over and over again, Liz, because these little nuggets are priceless. Liz, I think we've kind of come to the end of the show. Again, always a pleasure to have you on board. If at some point we can think of another reason to kind of like to connect recruitment with old movies, I will damn well kind of think of it. I think we're going to be scraping a bottle of barrel if we get to Easter movies and things like that.
Ralphie and A Christmas Story could make a comeback. There's always an opportunity for an Easter suit to come
One
in.
of the things I know we've both got a bit of a love of kind of Charlie Brown and kind of and that there is a Charlie Brown Halloween kind of cartoon, right? It's kind of Halloween and the Charlie Brown and the Pumpkin or something like that, right? Which I
The
thought
Great
about.
Pumpkin.
I've never
I got
seen
a
it, so
rock.
I've never seen it, so I couldn't bring it in.
Oh
But
my goodness! Oh, you have to see it. Okay, all right. Final snippet of movie and recruiting. So all of the kids are going out and they're getting candy. Lucy complains that she has to get candy for her stupid brother Linus, who's waiting on the Great Pumpkin. And poor Charlie Brown. Every time he goes to a house, he looks into his bag and he doesn't have anything else but a rock. I got a rock. And so this aspect of you can do everything like everybody else, and for some reason your reward and remuneration, you just got a rock.
You got a rock. Again, that's why we keep having you back, right? So I'm sure this won't be the last time.
Assignment.
This won't be the last time. We'll figure out another kind of movie genre to connect to recruitment. But for now, Liz, thank you very much.
Thank you, James. Always a pleasure. Happy Halloween.